Excellency, thank you so very much for your remarks. Now we continue our discussions here at GMIS 2021 to discover how we can use cyber-physical technology to enhance pandemic resilience and improve health outcomes. Manufacturing was at the heart of international efforts to combat COVID-19, scaling up production, producing ventilators, personal protective equipment and laboratory testing kits. And we also saw a role for advanced technology, whether that was developing AI-enabled identification, 3D printed PPE and robotic delivery of medical supplies. So how do we harness that manufacturing and that advanced manufacturing capacity to avoid future outbreaks and disruptions? Well, UNIDO aims to launch a global health initiative to maximize the power of the manufacturing sector. We will hear from UNIDO and from our panel of experts in just a moment or two, but first we're going to hear from Iran and Their Excellency Isa Zarpour, Iran's Minister of Information and Communication. Welcome. I'm afraid we haven't got the connection with Iran right at this moment. We will go back to them just as soon as we can. So I will invite my panelists who are waiting here in the wings, if they would like to make their way to the stage, please. As they do so, I will tell you who they are. We have Amna Al-Salah from the Ministry of Industry and Advanced Technology at the UAE, Teresa Minero from LifeBee, and Joshua Setipa from the United Nations Technology Bank for the Least Developed Countries. And we also will be joined in a moment, in fact right now, here he is, by Dr. Bernardo Calzadilla, who is from UNIDO. Give them all a round of applause, please. So you are all very welcome. Bernardo, you have more than 30 years in international experience in global development. You're the Managing Director of the Directorate of Digitalisation, Technology and Agribusiness at UNIDO. Talk to us about this global health initiative from UNIDO, how it works, where it will work, the scale and the ambition.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. And thank you for the question. And it is very clear that manufacturing has played a role, fundamental role in combating COVID-19. We were just talking repurposing, all the new productions of vital medicine, not to talk about the bigger. We needed to collaborate to bring together the vaccine production, and UNIDO has been very much active in these processes. So manufacturing is really fundamental to maintain the continuance of the value chain, of the supply chain that delivers these essential goods. But also we saw an increase of medical waste, and UNIDO has been doing that. And the most important aspect is that manufacturing has contributed to resilience, to the resilience and the recovery. We have seen also that not only manufacturing, but within manufacturing, those companies that have already digitally transformed are doing much better. So UNIDO has a long track record in the medical sector, in the pharma industry, in the medical waste, in the supporting innovation ecosystem, be it standards, good manufacturing practices, certification, mutual recognition to support. So while we have been working over the last 10, 15 years, very much concentrated on what we call TRIPS 2, I think, which was the trade-related investment, intellectual property waiver, UNIDO has been supporting especially African countries to their local production of medicine. And within that, on global manufacturing practices, improving quality assurance. And now we again saw the importance of the sector, and we had the call of many member states. We are being called for many member states for example, in Burkina Faso, to create a pharma pole. In Senegal, while they have a lot of capabilities in relation to even production of vaccines already, Institut Pasteur, they have already, but they still need some support. So we have tried to contextualize and make a global initiative in order to see how this can all make sense together, so that we strategically and systematically support our member states. And we have been also providing our member states support across other related priority areas. For example, climate action, and it is clear, and it was discussed in COP, that WHO was there, that the health sector and climate go hand in hand, and the climate has a tremendous impact on the health sector. And we have other elements such as nutrition. What I want to say, there are many interconnected aspects that led us to the need to have a broader initiative instead just responding to what was the origin, production of masks, standardization of masks, certification of respirators, and so. So this initiative is quite broad and will provide at the different levels an important aspect. The last one is to say advocacy. Yeah, UNIDO needs to advocate better on the relevance of the industrial sector, of the manufacturing sector within the health, global health sector, because this is not automatic. And if we are not part of it, yeah, then in particular, this will affect those capabilities in developing countries that are not yet developed. So we need to support that. It is through these different elements that we need to make this work. And the last element maybe to mention, like in the issue of vaccine production, we consider that it is important role that UNIDO can play, because we talk the language of the public sector. We talk with ministers, but we need to bring together the private sector. And this partnership, this global partnership between the global and private, is the role for UNIDO, and this is what this initiative can bring about. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see that Teresa is nodding to that, and Amna was also nodding, and I'll hear from both of you in just a moment. But Bernardo, if I can ask you this. Resilience was mentioned as an important consequence of this initiative. Is the world more resilient now in the terms of dealing with public health emergency than it was in 2019? Have we learned the proper lessons from the pandemic and acted on them?
I would not respond in a deterministic manner. I would rather say we are learning the lessons, and we need to learn the lessons. I come just from the launching of the Center for Biomedical Industrial Center that we will support in the UAE, and these responses have to be shaped. We need to shape, and as we shape this, we need especially to put attention to the cross-cutting elements. I said we need to put better attention to climate action, how climate. Yeah, we are obsessed to look it only on the pandemic, but look at climate. Look at, in that, the important thing is that we are coming to the conclusion, one lesson learned is that in the case of our migration to the cyber-physical space, we did it out of necessity in COVID-19. The lessons learned is we need to do it in a proactive manner. We need to address the challenges with foresight and proactively.
Thank you very much. Teresa Minero, I've introduced you as the Chief Executive Officer and founder of LifeBee. LifeBee is a company that assists life science companies adopt digital solutions to improve production quality and compliance. You're also a significant figure in the professional associations dedicated to the life science industrial sector. And since 2017, you've been working on a global annual survey of the progress of 4.0 in digitalization in pharma. give us a flavor of the results. What is that survey telling us?
Thank you. So first, I have to say that it's a great honor to be here today in this wonderful Dubai Expo in person to talk about the transformation that we are currently seeing in our industry. When I'm talking our industry, so pharmaceutical is not, I would call it in a wider sense, so life science, where we have also medical devices that have been mentioned, active product ingredients, so really the full ecosystem of industry and vendors that are providing so key product and material to the healthcare system. So as ISPE, for who does not know, ISPE is the largest professional global no-profit association dedicated to the life science industrial sector. Just to say, our mission, coming back to what Bernardo Cazzavilla was saying, is exactly connecting pharma knowledge. So I really think that thinking to the initiative that UNIDO is launching, it will be key to cooperate with that. But let's come to the question. The survey, yes, we assessed at global level. In the last edition, we had more than 52 territories all around the globe, more than 400 answers, so quite an interesting sample. And we had many questions to assess where we are in terms of digitalization and 4.0 in pharma. And of course, in the interest of time, I cannot share all the results, but please contact me on LinkedIn or whatever if you are interested in. And also keep in mind that we just ran the 2021 edition, so result will be ready soon. But talk about the result we have, so the last year. One is the maturity level, because it is important to understand where we are before deciding what to do to reach the next level. And you have to know that 1/5 of the sample have not started any digital transformation project yet. It's all around the world. But 37, they are just starting, and we saw a huge step during the pandemic year. You should know that before, I'm reading the figure not to be wrong, in 2019 we had 26 that were just starting, and then we had a jump in 1 year of 11% starting digital transformation project. And then we had 1/3 of the answer just doing pilots, so not a systematic ongoing action, and about 20% experiencing systematic ongoing action, really demonstrating that we are all, despite where we are based, let's say only at the beginning of the pharma journey. And I have to say that it's very different if you are in a green field, so brand new plant, of course, you don't have any legacy organization and system to take care. But when you are in a brown field, as we call, so probably old or not so new facilities producing not so fancy advanced technology, medicine, but classic medicine that we need to use anyway. In that case, we have a slow adoption because we have to deal with all the legacy system and culture. But another question, very important, is about the adoption of enabling technologies. I've heard in these 2 days mentioning so many times, of course, artificial intelligence, robots just before, but I think again it's important to know where we are really in the industry. So let me give a glimpse from the ground. So we have clustered the answer, and we discovered that we have mature technologies widely adopted. And they are cloud, they are mobiles, they are collaboration tools. But then we have not broadly adopted, yet rather mature technologies. And they are, at least in pharma, in our sample, robotics, big data, advanced analytics. So in this area, you have to say that for sure, regulation complexity is, let's say, something that is slowing down the adoption, because we know that it's so complex to validate and to taste in the interest of patients at the end these new technologies. But the less adopted, no surprise, is blockchain, it's augmented reality and virtual reality, but also artificial intelligence and digital twins are niche player in life science. We were expecting, or let's say, we were hoping to be bit more adapted, but this is the result we have.
Why has it, as far as you can tell, why have those technologies not been adopted more? Is industry signaling that it doesn't think they are very useful, or they're just still quite novel and we're working out how to make use of them?
I would say, as I was saying before, we have seen them used in brand new factory, in advanced therapies, less in the older one, because main reason is that we are struggling with the regulations and in really validating their use in line with our guideline and regulation. Because, you know, it's a computerized system. When you use them in a regulated environment like labs, like quality assurance or production, you need to really be sure that they behave as we want in the interest of patients.
Well, this might be a good point then to bring Amna Al-Salah into the discussion from the UAE Ministry of Industry and Advanced Technology. And I know that your ministry, fairly recently formed, thinks the digital transformation of healthcare is vital. When you hear Teresa talk about the different technologies and the variation in their adoption, what is your thought?
I think, Teresa, of course, you raise a very important point, especially in terms of regulation. And as mentioned by Declan, for the strategy of the ministry, the Industry and Advanced Technology strategy, prioritizes pharma and medical technologies as one of its priority sectors. And regulation, of course, is a very important part of it, especially with emerging technologies. Technologies now are developing at an increasing speed, and we need to be able to accommodate this with a strong regulatory framework. One of the initiatives that the government has, the UAE government has launched a few years ago is the RegLab. So basically providing a space for companies to be able to test their technologies in a relaxed regulatory environment to enable us to deploy and adopt these technologies in order to reap these benefits, because as you mentioned, Teresa, sometimes regulation can hinder the benefits of technologies.
But do we also need to consider incentives? Is there a role here for government to offer incentive to private companies to encourage them to further adopt those newer technologies?
Of course, I mean, it's important for government to provide incentives. Partnership is important. We can't just depend on the government or on the private sector. There needs to be partnership. So in terms of incentives, financing is important. And this is one of the things that the ministry has also launched recently with the Emirates Development Bank. Basically, they launched competitive financing packages with competitive interest rates and attractive grace periods to enable the digitalization of the industrial sector in priority sectors like pharma and medtech.
Whilst we talk about money, Joshua, it's probably a good time to bring you into our discussion. Joshua Setipa from the UN Technology Bank for the least developed countries. And the bank supports science, technology and innovation in some of the world's poorest countries. Tell me a little about the work that the bank does.
Well, thank you very much. The bank was established with a very specific mandate, and this is to mobilize support towards the 46 least developed countries of which are in Africa, South and Southeast Asia, in the Caribbean, and also in the Pacific. Based on the realization that despite global efforts to provide support towards these countries, they were lagging behind. When you look at connectivity, for example, when you look at global research output, today 1% of global research output is from the LDCs, despite combined population of 1.2 billion people. 19% of the population in the LDCs does not have access to the internet. Their trade volume is less than 2% globally. So unless a deliberate effort is made to support them, they will continue to lag behind. And the Technology Bank works with these countries to help identify where the gaps are. Is it within the policy framework? Is it within the ecosystem around innovation? Is it in enhancing research capacity? And we do this through partnerships. We build partnerships across a whole range of areas, from food security to public health. And we will continue to build these partnerships to see how we can mobilize the support for LDCs. We are a knowledge bank, so we do provide support to countries, but within a very limited capacity. But we work with partners in the private sector, in academia, and of course with governments, to mobilize this support to countries. We work very well with UNIDO to provide support around enterprise development, for example, and also to look at how we can enhance productive capacities. We also provide support towards adoption of clean technologies, energy transition, which is very important for countries, including the LDCs. Governance issues around the internet, around connectivity. As we push for connectivity, there are also issues that need to be we need to keep in mind, that need to be, we need to make sure that these countries are on the table when they're discussed, particularly around governance for internet, for example. We know that the Internet Governance Forum is seized with those discussions. So it's a whole range of interventions, but primarily to support the countries reach the SDGs, which also cover a whole range of issues that are very central to enhancing quality of life, enhancing recovery from COVID. We provided support also when COVID started for countries to be able to contain the spread of COVID. We had now, as we're talking about, technologies around ventilators, technologies around PPEs. Now, all those technologies are based on intellectual property. They're based on technologies that if you don't have it, you can't produce them. So we made available those technologies, working with partners to help countries produce N95 masks for themselves to be able to contain the spread of COVID. So there's a whole range of interventions that we continue to provide, but the long and short of it is that unless there is a dedicated global effort, the countries continue to either fall through the cracks despite multiple global initiatives, and the gap between them and the rest of the world in terms of connectivity and other metrics continues to grow. Yeah.
And just to say, you bring a wealth of personal experience to the role. You have over 20 years working at a senior level in government and international organizations, including the World Bank and the WTO. But when we just keep our focus on healthcare at the moment, talk more about the role of technology transfer in the global healthcare initiative.
Technology transfer is very critical to addressing healthcare challenges that developing countries and least developed countries continue to face. And I'll give you an example of the work we're doing in Bhutan at the moment, in partnership with a leading medical device company, where we are helping the government of Bhutan treat hearing loss in children between the ages of 0 to 14 through technology transfer and skills transfer. We aim over the next 3 years to treat 190,000 children through a combination of technology transfer and also skills development. We will also provide the same support to the Gambia and to Malawi, as countries that also face the same national challenge of having a high number of children suffering from hearing impairment. Now, the beauty of it is that if detected early, hearing loss in children can actually be cured, it can be reversed. And that is what we're aiming to do. And this is purely through technology transfer. Now, It's also important to underscore that technology transfer, from our approach, we focus on technologies that are available already on an open source basis or that are available on a voluntary basis, because there are also IP concerns which are justified, which are also very legitimate. So we manage technology transfer from that angle, that we will only make available technologies that are already available or on a voluntary basis. And we did that also with COVID, when we gave countries the technology to produce N95 masks. And we're able to also to provide them with technologies that help them build national ventilators. Because you remember that in 2019, there was a global shortage of ventilators. So countries had to be able to produce them. And we were able to provide access to technologies that we had accessed or was given to us by those that had made it available. And that's how,
yeah. This is so interesting. Teresa, it brings us to a pretty essential question, which is, why embrace digitalization in pharma? What is the point of this?
Yeah, I think yes. Sorry. Sometimes I think we lose the point, isn't it? So why we have to embrace 4.0 and digital transformation? I see around, I'm computer science as a background, many times people just falling in love with new technologies and thinking that digital transformation is an IT project, technological project. It is not. We have already many times said in these days that it's a lot about culture, a lot about skills that we have to develop. And more, very interesting data from World Economic Forum, skills that must be not only hard skill, so technical skill, but soft skill. More and more, we need to be able to work in a multicultural environment, and we need to work in a collaborative way. So that's key. But as ISPE, we have a slogan, and we say that we have always to remind the fact that 4.0 enabling 4.0 digital transformation has one key goal: provide the right information at the right time and in the right place. And because information is key in the fourth revolution. And do you know why we need to provide this? Because we need to support decision. Simple. More and more in a predictive manner, but we need to empower human beings, not to substitute them. Also, we discussed this about robotics. The point is empower human, enable them, whatever they are, operator on a packaging line, or manager, or CEO, or regulatory authorities. We need to empower them to make better decisions, because at the end, what we have to do as a life science sector, we have to deliver drugs to patients all around the globe. They are waiting for our medicine, and medicine must be safe, effective, innovative, at sustainable cost. Let me add, in a sustainable environment more and more, but in whichever country they may reside, not only in developed countries. So more and more, as we heard, in emerging countries. So the main goal is to do this: provide safe, effective, and innovative drugs when the patients need. And that's why we need to embrace 4.0.
There was the slogan right within that answer. This is all about better drugs, better services. Yes. That's the point.
Yes, it is.
Amna, if that's something that is to be achieved, what measures are necessary to secure the skills that Teresa was talking about, the hard skills, the soft skills, and to scale up the digitalization of healthcare?
Skills and talent is very important, and the government, some of the initiatives that the government has been doing is, which is part of the Industry 4.0 program that was discussed a lot in GMIS, and which was launched 2 months ago as part of the projects of the 50. One of the main focuses of this program is talent, upskilling, and we currently have a lot of initiatives with the representatives of the private sectors. We call them our champions, part of our Champions 4.0 network, where they provide upskilling programs and training for the industrial sector in priority sectors like life sciences to support upskilling and even instill awareness when it comes to these technologies and their importance.
There is an important issue, and Bernardo referred to this in his remarks as well. Amna, if I can ask you for your thoughts on this first, about intellectual property, because we saw during the pandemic that, for want of a better way of expressing it, companies took a more relaxed view towards protecting intellectual property to allow for faster manufacturing around the world. Now, is that a model that we now should follow? Is that the right ethical model to follow in the future? Or do we need to have a reinstatement of the importance of defending intellectual property? Which way should we go?
I mean, I believe when it comes to intellectual property, especially in essential and critical sectors like life sciences, there should be some exceptions made in order for us to bridge this divide or digital divide that is the current state of the world right now. And I mean, another important thing that I would like to also address is data. Data is very important when it comes to healthcare. And we need to ensure that we have the right regulatory framework to ensure data privacy and protection. And recently, the data law, the federal data law, was announced in the UAE to ensure that this important issue is addressed in this sector.
Thank you. I want to bring one further element into the discussion, and this may well be the last thing that we discuss as part of our time together. Bernardo, we saw during the pandemic that it affected different communities in different ways and at different degrees of severity. The pandemic highlighted the existing inequalities in healthcare. What progress do we make in the future towards addressing those inequalities, whether it's ethnic group, populations, or gender?
Thank you. Indeed, what the pandemic has shown, first of all, is the interdependence. Yeah, I mean, we had definitely at the core the pandemic and the health issue, but this time we saw that the economic crisis is as important as the pandemic. Why can some countries not go into lockdowns and take all the measures? Because business will not accept. The economy has been disrupted. At the beginning, you remember, of the pandemic, we saw how the supply chain, the global chain, were disrupted. And even there was a questioning of the globalization system as a whole. There was a saying, no, with the pandemic, globalization is over. It is not over, but we have to address the problems that go with that. And for developing countries, in the case of one perspective, which is, let's say, access to markets, it is definitely the possibility to have clear rules, clear standards, and clear rules how this will be certified, accredited, and reach the countries. Now, if we talk about vulnerable groups, I think that the key word is skills and capacity building. Yeah, we need entrepreneurship development. We need to work on education first. So to strengthen the education systems at all levels is for me something that is fundamental if we want to address the needs. And also that policy needs to address the needs of those that have some skills, like young people. They have the capacity to bring their startups, but there needs to be an ecosystem that supports them to grow. So this is the essence, I think, of where we have to put the emphasis, is that it will not happen on its own, that we need policies to support those groups, and that any policy needs to take into account, and it was said in a different form, that the new technologies have to be adapted in not in a neutral manner, but in a proactively manner that will lead to a better world. I like the concept that exists in relation to artificial intelligence. There is a slogan said, artificial intelligence for good. Yeah, and this is fundamental. It is not we need more technologies. We need to qualify whether these technologies are inclusive and also are sustainably friendly, are gender responsive, yeah, and in that sense contribute in a context of a better governance to have a digital transformation that leads to a better future.
Thank you. Joshua, is technology the solution or part of the solution to addressing global health inequality?
Technology is a very critical part of the solution, and I think if we all recall that 24 months ago, we had never heard of the word COVID-19. 24 months ago, there was not a single vaccine for COVID. Today we have, I think the last time I checked, there were over 10 vaccines in different stages of development. And that shows not only the importance of technology, but the importance of partnerships. Without partnerships between governments, the private sector, and other stakeholders, we would not have been able to be flying around today so soon and so early in the pandemic, because we now have 6, 7 vaccines to choose from. And that was only possible through technology. It was only possible through partnerships. So technology, yes, is very central to that. Technology is also very central to the levels of improvement in the quality of life of millions of people over the last 2 or 3 decades. The improvement in life that you see in Southeast Asia, in China, and other places couldn't have happened if it wasn't for technology. But technology has to be accessible. Technology has to be, it has to be for good, as it was said. It is also important to remember that with connectivity, as we're talking about digitalization, there are also challenges. We have to have a very balanced approach, that when we look at how technology and digitalization will enhance quality of life, improve education systems and all that, there's also the flip side of it, which is it poses threats that need to also be managed. Otherwise, that good intention will tomorrow become the next big challenge.
Thank you. Teresa, just 30 seconds or so left, a brief last word from you.
So yes, I can only echo what has been told by the other speaker. Talking about what the other lady said, yes, data are key, information are key, but more and more in the pharma, life science sector, we have what we call data integrity. So we need to have the right data, the data that we can trust on, clean data, and that's key in order then to have artificial intelligence or whatever you want to elaborate them, and this is key. Another last point is that I've heard at the beginning in the opening session that pandemic has been a wake-up call, for sure, but I think that my one now is a call to action. So it is the right time. We have the technologies, also at sustainable cost. But now what we need to do is to really work in a collaborative way, in a change management approach, in order to really take the right drugs, innovative drugs for a healthier world. This is what we have to do now, and we need to be quick with that.
Thank you very much. Teresa, thank you very much. Please join me in thanking our speakers, our excellent panelists. Thank you so much for your participation in this discussion today. And you should feel free now to retire from the stage and enjoy the rest of GMIS 2021.